So today's event with ABG, we have close to 60 Nordic companies presenting with us during 2 days here, which is a record number. Each company on the agenda will hold a short presentation, followed by a Q&A from our analysts. The event is live streamed, but can also be viewed in afterwards on the Introduce platform. And my name is Stefan Knutsson. I'm an equity analyst here at ABG, and I follow the service sector. And with me today, I have the CEO of Fram. Welcome, Christopher Besselin.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right over there?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. So I'll kick off immediately. I'll try to cover the slides in roughly 20 minutes, and then we do a Q&A after that. So I'm actually dialing in from Saigon in Vietnam today, and that's where we have most of the operations in our group. And for those who don't know us since before, Fram is a investment company that invests and builds companies within tech and internet businesses in Vietnam and in an extension also Southeast Asia. So I think we can flip to the second slide. So this is what we'll cover today. We will go through a little bit of introduction of us, and then we will cover also on a business segment level the digital brands, which is what we call the ventures we have in our portfolio today. And then the standing teams, which is our second business segment, and that's an IT development business that we do in a little bit of a special format inside Fram. And then we'll go through the management team and the board, and finally we will finish off with some financials and also the value case for investing in Fram. I think we can take next slide. So this is a little bit the background of the group. We started out in 2013. Myself, I came to Vietnam roughly 10 years ago. Previously, I was with Sevien, the leading European activist investment fund based in Sweden. And then I moved to Vietnam in the beginning of 2012 to start up a company called Lazada, which today is the largest e-commerce company in the region. And we subsequently sold it to Alibaba for roughly $3 billion. I was the CEO in Lazada Vietnam. I was also the CEO in Lazada Malaysia prior to selling it to Alibaba. And then in the group, we also have Max Bergman. He's today leading our fintech ventures, and he has a background from another Kinnevik-related company called Bima, which is micro-insurances. And he built up that business in Sri Lanka to roughly 300 employees and profitability. Fram today is a group of roughly 100 employees. We have offices in Saigon, Da Nang, Gothenburg, and Stockholm. And in the portfolio today, we have 6 ventures and the IT development business. I think we can take the next slide. So this gives you a little bit of an overview of the 2 segments. We will go into a little bit more of a deep dive into both of them further along the way. What we call digital brands is a portfolio of ventures that we have either built from scratch as subsidiaries to the group, or we have acquired digital brands that we have then restarted as subsidiaries in the group. And we'll come back to that a little bit further on. The standing teams business is a IT development business that is setting itself apart in the sense that it's not your classic kind of project-based business. Rather, it's based on long-term engagements with the clients, and it's much more so that we build an extended IT development team for the client than that we build an IT project or an IT product and then deliver that to the client. So it's much more long-term and it's much more recurring than your ordinary project business. I think we can take next slide. This is roughly what the opportunity that we are very excited about inside Fram, and the opportunity that our shareholders invest in. In this region, Southeast Asia, it's to many people not that well known. You have 600 million consumers. And if we take next slide, we have roughly 500 million internet users in this region. And it's a population of internet users that are growing very fast. So this is an opportunity that is roughly half the size of China, significantly less developed and much more upside, and it's growing faster than China is and China's internet sector is. We can take next slide. In this slide gives you a little bit of the breakdown of the main markets in the region. And obviously we have Indonesia, that is the biggest population pocket. And then you have Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. In Vietnam, it's not the largest market. It's perhaps soon the second largest internet market in the region. And it's set to be the fastest growing internet market in the region. And this is based on an annual report done by Temasek, Google, and Bain that is called E-Economy that I recommend everybody to dig into. It's a very good report of the region's internet businesses and internet business sectors. We can take next slide, please. And next one. And then we go into deep dive on the digital brands. We can go into next one. Basically, what we have done in the digital brands in Fram is that we have taken proven internet models or internet business models that we have deemed possible to adapt to a frontier market like Vietnam. And then we have rolled them out in Vietnam. So this is roughly the rollout schedule of businesses that we have started in our portfolio in Vietnam and in the region. I want to highlight two businesses on this slide for context, and that's Panguera and Intrepid. Panguera and Intrepid are two businesses that we have now exited or spun out of the group. So they're kind of the role models of how we do these ventures and how we build them inside Fram. And both with Panguera and Intrepid, the return on capital invested has been in the range of 10 to 20x. So it gives you a little bit a feeling of the power of a model like this. Intrepid is now active in 6 countries in the region, has 400 employees, and recently closed its Series B financing. I think we can take the next slide. So here you have an overview of some of the key companies that we have in the portfolio today. This is then on the digital brand side. So in the portfolio, you have Carmody, which is a leading car auction site in Vietnam. We have some peers out to the right. Of course, they are much bigger companies, so the absolute numbers, take them with a bit of salt. But I encourage you to go and look up what kind of multiples peers like these are trading at, and to give you a sense of where we might be heading, and add to that mostly the multiples are higher in the early stages of venture financing than they are with the listed peers. And then second on the slide is Eva Hr. That's a leading employee engagement app. I think many people in Scandinavia, they would know a peer like Benify relatively well. So that's probably the most similar business in Scandinavia. Wow Mello is a buy now, pay later. A buy now, pay later is what Klarna is, or Klarna's core is, and where Klarna started out. And then we have Dragonlend, an SME lender. We do both online brokering of loans and issue loans online as well. Then we have Mary, which is a wedding service marketplace. Obviously, this one has had a little bit of a tough time lately with the COVID restrictions and so on, but is a very, very strong brand in its niche in the online space in Vietnam. On top of that, you have a sixth venture, which is Nordic Coder. It's an IT engineering academy, but it's perhaps a little bit less of digital scalability in that one, so that's why I excluded on this slide. We can take next slide, please. And then we go into standing teams quickly. We can flip to this one and the next one. Here, this gives you a sense of why I say that our IT development business model is slightly different. What we do with the clients is that we build a tailor-made IT development team for them. So typically the kind of the engagement scope is a number of different roles of IT engineers. And then we build that team, and then that client will work with that team basically on a fixed retainer basis and with an automatic renewal of contract. So this gives you a stable IT development business with a predictable cash flow and with very little or no project risk. We can take the next slide, please. This gives you a feeling of the types of clients that we work with in the IT development business. It ranges anywhere from global players such as Samsung and Lotte. Those are some of South Korea's largest conglomerates, to Swedish companies like Bubble Room and TipTap and so on and so forth. I think we can take next one. And next one. And another one. It's good that we cover a lot of slides in a few minutes. So here is the board. Here you have myself. I think we went through a little bit the background there. And then we have Stina Andersson, which is currently the CEO of Bonnier Group. She was previously with McKinsey and in the group management teams of Tele2 and also Kinnevik. And then you have Michael Steinbach, the chairman. He has a very extensive track record from running the operations of Ericsson as the COO in basically every emerging market that you can list. It's anything from all the BRIC countries to Sri Lanka, to Vietnam, to Thailand, etc., etc. Then we can take next slide. Here we have the management team. You have myself as the CEO, and then you have Max Bergman, who's heading up the fintech ventures with a background from Bima. You have Niklas Berglund, who is the CFO. He also has a background from Bima. And then you have Duy Vu, the COO, who has an extensive track record from leading digital organizations and engineering organizations in Vietnam. We can take the next slide, please. Here we have more of the team that focuses on the IT development part and the technical parts of our team. You have Thea Phan, who is an interesting combination of Swedish, Vietnamese, and British passports, who has a background from the financial industry, JP Morgan, and also as a developer, as a Python developer. So she has that unique mix of financial understanding and business acumen and also the technical parts. And then you have Andy, Fu, and Tuan, who are our technical architects and project managers, which are very, very well versed in the popular technological stacks of today. If we take next slide, please. And the next one. And here we come to the financial development of the group. I have given you here a couple of high-level charts to get kind of the overview since the IPO. So basically, we listed at the end of 2017, and we raised money really to build out the digital brands. And remember then that the digital brands is something that we build ourselves basically from scratch. So these are not only external investments, it's really operational investments. So what you see then since the IPO, as we roll out, of course, we accumulate larger losses as we build more and more companies in parallel. But then you will also see here in the chart that these losses have then narrowed step by step, and it's on a path to break even and then path to profitability. And then you have the digital brands, which have experienced a significant growth up until COVID. Then COVID started to hurt the digital brands significantly in Q3, since we had a so-called military-assisted lockdown in the southern parts of Vietnam, which meant that even e-commerce deliveries were restricted or even forbidden during large parts of Q3. So Q3 we had a significant loss of top line in the digital ventures. To us, it's looking like it's bouncing back now since October, when everything is basically back to normal during Q4 in Vietnam. And then standing teams has been in more of the steady development since the IPO. I think we have now put in place a new management with Thea in the lead, and I envision that we can get back to both growth and profitability in that unit as well. I think we can take next slide to finish off then. So this is the last slide in this presentation, and I wanted to kind of put the emphasis on the value case in the group, also being a value investor by background myself. But really, if you take the portfolio of 7 companies that we have today in Fram, and you look at the ventures where we have done external fundraisings, so basically where we have attracted other investors to invest in the ventures we hold, and we then kind of get an arm's length valuation for them. Then you have Eva Hr, valued at 44 million krona, and then you have Dragonland valued, or our stake in these businesses are valued at 44 and 40 million respectively. Then you have roughly 20 million of cash in the group, and then you have the standing teams business. I put now a multiple of 1.5 of the top line. I think peers are valued somewhere in the range of 1 to 3 times top line, depending on a little bit the focus and the growth and profitability. But with just those basic building blocks that are very verifiable, so to speak, you already arrive at something very close to the market cap or slightly above. The market cap now is around 135 million. Then, and these are the interesting parts to start to think about and estimate what could be the value. But the unknown parts in this equation for the time being is, what is Carmody worth? Carmody is by far the largest venture we have in the portfolio in terms of top line. And then what are the other kind of more nascent businesses, Valmello, Mary, and Nordicoder worth? And that will basically give you the value upside of this case. Or turning it the other way around, currently if you invest into the Fram share of the market, you are basically getting Carmody, Valmello, Mary, Nordicoder for free. And keep in mind then that these car marketplaces currently are valued, if you look at the traded peers, I gave you some names there: Frontier Digital Ventures, Carsales.com, Carzoo. There are many, many more actually. They are valued in the range of 7.5 to 12 times top line. So it's an interesting kind of estimation exercise to do. And then of course you also have those other nascent businesses for free, so to speak. This chart is then in million of Swedish krona. It seems to have dropped off here. I think that's the last slide actually. So thank you very much for listening. I think we made it 10% ahead of time. Please feel free to shoot any questions you might have.
Perfect. Thank you, Christopher. Really interesting presentation. I will start off the Q&A by just asking a bit about the COVID-19 lockdowns. I mean, we saw that the digital brands has lost some pace, but my understanding is that we have seen a lot of digital business models really excel during this pandemic. Why have you been negatively affected? And can you just share your views here?
I think that's a very good question and a very fair question. In general, it's absolutely right. Digital behavior, digital business is accelerated by this type of shift in behavior and people, where they work and where they are during the day and so on. The kind of specificity about Vietnam in Q3 was that we had this so-called military assisted lockdown, which makes you smile every time you say it, but it was a very bad idea that everybody should shelter in place and you are not allowed to exit your home even for grocery shopping, and basically the government will deliver your food. And during that time, also e-commerce deliveries and any other type of confirmation for digital transactions were basically also forbidden. So take, for example, Carmody, our largest and most important revenue driver in the digital brands business. Whenever we sell a car over our marketplace, we still need the local authorities, and in this case, the police, to shift the ownership title of the car from the seller to the buyer. All of that completely froze during Q3. Nothing was done. You could not change ownership of a car during Q3. So there were a little bit of a special lockdown with some absolute blockers that made digital business also very difficult during that period.
Well, that is a good explanation, and of course we do not have these kind of regulations in Europe, for example. But do you have any forecasts on the lockdown situation in Southeast Asia going forward?
Yes, so it's in Vietnam specifically, it's all back to normal as of 1st of October. So Q4 is, in terms of restrictions, a completely normal quarter. Of course, you were kind of ramping up, a little bit in the beginning, so all restrictions were not removed immediately day one, but relatively quickly they were removed. So Q4 is a normal quarter. I mean, I'm sitting in the office right now, and cars are definitely being traded and so on.
Perfect. And then a question about profitability. You're currently not profitable. Have you set out any target for when you could reach a milestone like that?
No, we have not set out any targets. I think quite a few of our ventures have been pretty close to profitability and even probably have shown a few months of profitability. The balance here, the trade-off here is when you're building companies from a very early stage, like we're doing, basically from 0 to 1 and then beyond, you will basically reach plateaus or stepping stones in terms of how you manage your profitability. So first you go into relatively big losses when you ramp up your overhead and your fixed cost base. Then you start to build volume and you kind of dilute away that fixed cost base. And then you will probably reach a phase where you are at profitability or close to profitability. And then comes the interesting question, should we raise more money and accelerate again? Probably run into some more losses, but on the other hand, we will probably earn that back in terms of how much market share we secure over the long term. I mean, if I look at the Lazada case where we built out an e-commerce leader across the region, that company has not shown profitability for 10 years and it's still worth probably $5 to $10 billion or more today. So it's a constant balance and trade-off where you need to show that the model has fundamentals that can build profitability and are attractive over time, but you should go aggressive for growth to make sure that you win the longer race. And many times I think better to think about it in terms of a 10-year P&L. Summarize all the years for 10 years, and then you will kind of get a receipt of how the profitability was accurately built or not.
Perfect. And then I also want to touch upon Carmody, which you mentioned, and that you have seen some peers trading at higher multiples. Just can you mention something about Carmody's KPIs and how does they stack up against the competition?
Of course, the peers that are listed are larger. Our market is in an earlier phase. We are much more focused on auctions than we are on classifieds. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when you look at different peers. I mean, if you look at a company like Blocket Bil, for example, that's mostly classifieds. And then you're not in the transaction. We are in the transaction, which typically means that you can extract more value and you can add more ancillary services like financing, like warranty and similar things. If you look in the region, I think we have an interesting landscape where you have two very large players, Caro and Carsum. And they are in all markets, but not this market. And when they enter this market, I'm fairly confident that they would go for an acquisition rather than to start from scratch. And the reason I say that is when you look at the inflation in terms of how much cost for building traffic has increased over the last 5 or even 10 years, it has gone radically up. So to rebuild the traffic that we have would cost so much more than it cost for us to build it in the first place. So that equation, I think, will boil down to a strategic acquisition in Vietnam.
Perfect. Very interesting, Christopher. We are unfortunately out of time, but I would like to thank you for coming here and presenting with us today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.